You look at someone like Triple H, and I know when I look at him, he's always had a good look as far as his body went. You know, he always had a pretty muscular physique. I don't know how much of that is natural, you know, and I assume it's natural. You know, I assume he's under the same scope that everyone else is in that company, but I don't know either. But you look at someone like Hunter and you go, what has he ever really done? Vince was always a detail guy, whereas Bischoff never had a clue about anything.
Right.
Bischoff wouldn't know a good idea if it ran him over. Psychology, they call it in wrestling.
Yeah.
Some guys got it, some guys don't. Some guys never get it. Some guys don't even know what it is, like Eric Bischoff.
And Eric Bischoff was one of the most stupid idiots I ever met in my whole life, with so much talent everywhere. And that Eric Bischoff was such an idiot. He couldn't do anything, and he couldn't stay. I shake my head today and I go, what a shame. I would go to Eric Bischoff every couple of days and go, how about putting me with Booker T, or how about putting me with Benoit, or how about sticking me with Kurt Hennig? And, you know, Bischoff, most of the time, he would shoot down anything you brought to him.
Yeah.
And he'd give you the stupid grade 1 logic of someone that doesn't know anything about anything. Logic about, oh, we can't do that because the sky's blue. And, you know, it was always like, I'd always walk out of his office and go, that isn't even a reason why not to do something. But he's so stupid and afraid of exposing that he's an idiot. He reminded me of the guy on Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, making all the noise and pulling all, but he didn't know anything.
That was the whole problem in WC, right down to Bischoff, who never had a clue. There's been a few more clueless idiots in the wrestling business than Eric Bischoff. He's pretty close to an imbecile.
Bischoff knows nothing. He's an idiot.
I always thought of Hunter as a real ass kiss. He had his nose so far up Vince's ass that, and Shawn's, and like he was never a straight guy. I don't have much regard for Hunter. I thought he was not a straight guy. Never one of the boys. Never one of the guys in the dressing room. He had his own agenda and was a very sneaky, kind of cowardly kind of guy.
Triple H was always a good wrestler, but great. I don't know, what is he, 1,000-time world champion now, or like I don't know. Like, how great really is he? But you see this talent out there sometimes, and then you look at someone like Triple H, and I know when I look at him, he's always had a good look as far as his body went. You know, he always had a pretty muscular physique. I don't know how much of that is natural, but you look at someone like Hunter and you go, what has he ever really done? What is he? One move that he ever created that nobody ever saw before, some high spots, or an idea for a match, or I got this idea, or I don't know what he ever brought to the table. He's mostly a guy that showed up and they've made him. He's always been a decent wrestler, but great? I don't know. I don't think so. And if he's running the show, it goes back to my whole argument before. You got guys that are telling everyone what to do. What has he ever done? That's great. Like, he's never had a great match. Whenever I look at Triple H's matches, including the last one he had with Undertaker, and I don't really mean it as a knock, but I told myself before I watched it, because I'm trying to like Paul now these days, I go, I want to see him do something to make me think, yeah, he's got greatness in him. Before Triple H wrestled Undertaker last year, was that last year? I remember watching it and going, I can picture the whole match in my head before. I can tell exactly what this match is going to be like and how it's going to go. And I remember watching it, and it was exactly like I predicted. Like, it was exactly mostly brawling around on the floor and doing stuff that a lot of times that is pretty easy wrestling. It's not really, it's not complicated. It's not, there's no genius behind it. I just thought you're both supposed to be these great wrestlers, and Undertaker is a great wrestler. let's see you deliver it. And I thought it was mediocre at best, and maybe a 4 out of 10 or 3 out of 10. I don't know. I don't want to say, but I think Paul's a little overrated. He's overrated for being great, but I can't sit here and tell you that I can name one match that I ever thought he ever had with anybody that was great. And it's kind of a shame. He should have a great match somewhere with somebody. And you'd think he would have had it by now, but I don't think he's a great wrestler.
The screw job was a direct result of Triple H and Vince McMahon. And Triple H was probably the biggest, the most responsible party of the whole bunch. He's never apologized for it. I don't expect that he ever will. I don't know that he rightfully could apologize for it. It turned out to be nothing but gravy for him ever since. People know what happened. I know what happened. The Wrestling with Shadows documentary captured, for the most part, the whole thing anyway. But, you see Triple H sort of hiding away and cowering from my ex-wife and sort of denying that he had any involvement. There you go. That's your integrity. That's your piece of shit right there.
I'd say he was a two-faced, lying chicken shit. And I'm probably being nice to him.
And now?
I don't think that's a snake that never changes stripes. He was the kind of guy that would make friends with you or bury the hatchet with you 10 minutes later, and 10 minutes later he'd be out there stabbing you in the back again. You couldn't make peace with him. He was a guy, and the guy that was, I think he had put a new meaning to the word sort of prima donna or self. He had such a huge ego. But Shawn was a guy that was very insecure and very, I think, weak as a person. I'd say like Hulk Hogan was a 9 out of 10 promo, 9 out of 10 look, 1 out of 10 wrestler.
The only thing Hulk Hogan knows or knew, he doesn't even know, like it doesn't even matter anymore. He's older than I am. He's like still hanging on, still hanging in there.
I was at the peak of my career. I had nothing but one good pay-per-view after another that year. I was as hot as I could ever be. And they brought me in, and they killed me off. I think right off the bat, and that was Hulk Hogan. Killed me off, automatic. Yeah. And I didn't know it at the time, and guys told me later on, and I've since figured out that Hogan put a knife in my back the second I got there and made sure that they never did anything with me.
The only thing Hulk Hogan ever knew was how to make Hulk Hogan. Yeah. He couldn't tell you how to make AJ Styles or Samoa Joe. What's Hulk Hogan going to tell Samoa Joe? He doesn't know anything to even tell him. He's got zero to offer.
Think Hulk Hogan will ever be back in the WWE? Let's hope not. Let's really hope that he, lives with himself in Tampa and stays there and in his little world of, idol worship of himself. I'm not a big Hulk Hogan fan. For Hulk Hogan to make the comments that he made is something that if you've had a camera like that in most of the dressing rooms with a lot of the southern wrestlers from Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, even Texas, you get a lot of that kind of slant on things. And I'm kind of glad he got busted for that reason, that times have changed and, you have to answer for that stuff, and he's answering for it. He's probably glad that Roddy Piper passed away because it took all the edge off all that.
I'm kind of baffled when people tell me that they think Ric Flair was the greatest wrestler of all time. I was not convinced ever that he was the greatest wrestler or as great as people thought he was.
Why do people think he's the greatest, John? What are the reasons you hear?
Because he was a flamboyant character.
Charisma,
and he was. But as far as working in the ring, I found him, I wouldn't say ancient, but kind of a whole different mindset to what my generation was all about. He was locked into the 70s and couldn't break out of that. Ric Flair, you see this stuff, it's like there's no art to that. It's like just everybody knows, hey, there's a guy wrestler cutting his forehead again.
Goldberg hurt a lot of guys. I remember Kurt Hennig talking to me about how hurt he was from being speared every night by Goldberg, and I remember he body slammed Haku on his head, straight down, almost broke his neck, and just different things. And it's like, we're not crash test dummies. We're professional wrestlers, but we're human beings too, and you can't just kick somebody as hard as you can in the head and expect them to be okay. And I think Goldberg never understood that it was all the guys going in there making him look good every night that is why he was over, and it wasn't about him. It was about the guys that he was hurting, and he was hurting a lot of guys. And even with me and Bill, one of the last words I said to him before I went out to the ring with him that night was, I said, whatever you do, don't hurt me. And it's like, he went in there and he hurt me, and he hurt me bad, and it cost me millions of dollars and it was just out of my pocket, and it changed my life forever. I think it was for sure a direct lead into me having a stroke.
Vince Russo was a magazine writer that thought he was a wrestling expert that never had a good idea in his life.
I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not really optimistic that it's going to be a great job. Martha handcuffed them so much. Martha, the widow of Owen, that really I don't know if they're even allowed to use any pictures from the past. It was very. It's a poorly done DVD because of all the restraints and the limitations that Martha put on it, and to me that's such a lousy thing to have happen. That Martha, I think Owen would turn in his grave if he knew how much trouble Martha's gone to erase his career and to make sure that nobody enjoys anything about his career today. It's a bitterness and a selfishness that I can't stand by anymore. I think Martha's taken the wrong approach, and she should understand that we all miss Owen. I lost a brother, and I lost a great friend, and maybe one of my closest people that I knew on this earth. And I want to celebrate his career. I want to watch his matches back, not just with me, but with everybody he worked with. And his time with WWE, they got so much footage and so many great memories with Owen. And here she is standing in the way of that and saying nobody can see these videos, no one should see anything that's it brings back any of his career.
So WWE footage, they can't use his matches in the WWE?
They can do select things, but they couldn't use any pictures from his childhood. They couldn't use any pictures. They couldn't use anything from Stampede Wrestling. They couldn't. They had so many restraints. Even the interviews, the questions that they did with me were so bullshit. And the whole thing was so bullshit that sure, there's an Owen Hart DVD, but it's the shits. It's the shits. It's the shits.
And the truth is, I had no intentions of going to WCW. I didn't want to go there. Never wanted to go there. I always knew they were second rate. I knew from Austin. Austin had nightmare stories. Like he would get tremble when he talked about how screwed up it was. It was like it almost gave him a twitch. I was like, okay, I won't go there. He was really right about it too. A bunch of idiots. When I look at 1997 wrestling, the stuff I was doing, the stuff that Undertaker was doing, the stuff that Steve Austin was doing, the stuff that Shawn was doing, we had such a great crew of wrestlers. It was really was like an all-star team. It was heads and tails, so far ahead of beyond anything WCW was doing. And I would watch the two shows, even when I was off, when Shawn had the title, when he first won the title. Yeah. I'd watch the two shows together, kind of switching back and forth like fans do. And I remember going, I can't take it. This WCW stuff is horrible.
It's the shits.
It was the same thing every week where there's a bunch of NWO guys running in the ring and maybe have an elephant come out of the score clock or the parachute or something. They always had stupid, Dennis Rodman or somebody. It never made any sense. It was all just cheap gimmicks.
The only thing that WCW couldn't buy, that they couldn't attain, was somebody with any brains. Talk about idiots running what a bunch of morons. Vince McMahon talking to me before I ever left for the company, about a year before, he goes, WCW would never know what to do with a Bret Hart.
Yeah.
And, it always echoed in my head, and I always knew it before, and I agree. And I never ever did want to go there. I was actually kind of sad that I ever ended up there. WCW was such a chaotic mess of bad ideas.
I can't take it.
What do you think of what Bischoff and Hogan are doing now then with TNA wrestling?
I got no faith in either one of them, like zero. Like they're going nowhere. If anything, they're going to lose a lot of ground. Yeah. They're spending a fortune on a guy that's worthless. Yeah. And Bischoff's as worthless as Hogan. The two of them got zero to offer the business. Vince Russo, is he still with the company?
No, he's left.
That's maybe a modest improvement. But anyway, I just think, they got all the rejects. They picked up all their trash that Vince would, swept to the side when everything was over. And AJ Styles is as good a wrestler as anybody in the world. He's really good. He should be wrestling in WWE. I mean, he's spinning his tires in TNA. And if he really wants to make it as a star, the star that he is, he needs to dump that Bush League and get to the big time. And I just hope that AJ Styles doesn't waste his life in TNA.
It's the shits.
Well, technical is one thing. Sometimes it can be a deterrent. Like Dean Malenko was a technical but he never drew a dime kind of thing. Like he was just a wrestler that did a lot of fancy moves, and you need more than that.
All I know is that Davey gets injured, or supposedly injured. I never bought that he was injured. I know that Davey, when he got on the plane, he had been up for almost 48 hours, hadn't been to sleep. He'd been on a coke binge. He hadn't slept since he got there, and he was a wreck, and he hadn't trained, he hadn't lifted weight. He was out of shape, and he was a wreck. I got there the next day, and we went over it, and even then, as soon as we tied up in the ring, I remember, I think it was the very first spot we did. I took him over in a side headlock or something, and he goes, "I'm fucked. I'm fucked." I tell all this to people, and they go, "Oh, so they lose a little respect for Davey," and fair enough, you can. Steele was one of the worst. George Steele was one of those kind of guys. I remember George Steele doing lines of coke and partying with everyone else, and then like a week later or a couple of weeks later, they made him an agent, and he was just like one of the prisoners that got turned into one of the guards, and he was just a motherfucker, man. He was not a good guy at all. He was always fine. He fined my brother Owen in Berserker one time. We were 1 minute late in Hershey Park one time when I was champion, right after I won the belt. I remember Owen and Berserker were riding with me just because I was give him a free ride to the, I never charged for trans. When we got there, we were laughing, we were taking our time, we were getting coffees and stuff like that, and walking the dressing room. And George Scott's like this, and he goes, "It's 6:32 or something like that," and I go, "So?" He goes, "You're 2 minutes late." I go, "Really?" He goes, "I gotta find you." He fined all of us $500 each. My brother Owen and Macho Man, I can actually tell this story now. They took his Halliburton, if he's ever wondered whatever happened to us, his Halliburton. He had locked up with his passport and his colostomy bags and his pills and everything else, and there's airplane tickets. And I remember Owen, him and Randy snuck it out under a jacket to the car. And later on that night, an hour later after we left the building, I remember Owen, we were driving over a bridge in somewhere like New Rochelle or something like that, and he opened the window and threw it out, and it went sailing over into the river, Manhattan River or something like that. But I just remember George Scott. I always wondered, why would someone do that to such a good guy? But George Steele. George Scott. I'm sorry, George Steele. And he was not a good guy. He was a snitch.
Bruce Prichard, in our last release of our series, Guest Booker, vehemently defends the Red Rooster gimmick. With passion and conviction, that here's a guy who's the cock of the walk. Why wouldn't you make him the Red Rooster? Just want you to know what's going on out there. If you
now you know why Bruce is where he is.
WCW with guys like Kevin Sullivan and the nitwits they had running around there that were telling guys what to do. Most of the guys in that kind of role and that were telling guys what to do were guys that never made it. I always thought, here's Kevin Sullivan telling me what to do in my match, and kind of trying to think of a finish at the top of his head. And clearly while I'm talking to him, I'm going, this guy's not a big star, never a guy that never drew money, has never done anything, but he's given guys direction.
My brother Bruce, who knows nothing.
So I just have a lot of trouble buying that story, and then you look, if you ever knew her or saw her. Yeah, I mean, you be the judge. I've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was with some woman, that wasn't very, she was a 2 out of 10. And you go, oh, Arnold could get better than that.
You'd think.
But he sure missed the boat on that one. And Tiger Woods is another one. He was with these 3 out of 10 skanks from Florida strip bars and stuff. Anyway, my point is that sometimes people end up with some pretty skanky looking women.
I think the biggest rag I can make about the WWE would be the sort of foremen or the agents that they got running. They have a big say in how the shows, and they're all basically governed by Vince. Like, they do whatever Vince tells them to do, which is the way it's supposed to be. But the reality of it is that, like, I don't know, it's like having a bunch of high school football coaches coaching the Dallas Cowboys. Right. It's like you really can't have the bunch of mediocre wrestlers telling the wrestlers what to do. They got mediocre guys, a lot of guys that washed up out of WCW, which says it all, that are telling everyone what to do. Okay, you're doing this wrong, you're doing, and I was in Europe, and I had Arn Anderson, who I like Arn and everything, and I have a lot of respect for Arn. But he came in and he blew some little tiny thing aspect of the match out of proportion, and this is with the Nexus guys, he made them feel so bad about something they did wrong in the match. And I remember listening to him, and I'm going, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. I mean, Arn Anderson's, I salute him to a certain degree as a wrestler, but he never drew any big money, ever in his life. Dreamed about it. Dreamed about having the great matches that other guys had. Dean Malenko, nice guy.
Nice guy? I don't give a shit. Good father? Fuck you, go home and play with your kids.
Not a main event guy. Never sold out Madison Square Garden. Never worked on top. Mike Rotundo, another guy. Great guy, great wrestler. Terry Taylor is another guy. They're all the guys walking up and going, hey, Punk, come here, this is what you're doing wrong. And I disagree with all that. And I think these guys need to get some guys that know what they're talking about. I would pose that question to Vince McMahon myself, and I think I did about a year ago. I was like, why do you got such lousy guys telling everyone what to do? But Vince he's loyal to his guys and thinks he's got the best team out there, and that's just my opinion. But I mean, I believe that they'd be better served if they hired guys like Piper, and even Cowboy Bob Orton knows more about wrestling than Arn Anderson will ever know.
This was a very divisive group at that time who today, I mean, they're largely praised.
Praised by who? Triple H?
I think a lot of the audience, just looks at it at a time when they don't know all the intricate details of what went on at that time.
Literally a cancer in the dressing room, all of them. And I think they're all, I don't doubt that Shawn Michaels is sorry for a lot of that kind of behavior. Kevin Nash was a great wrestler and a good guy, but I don't think he can be that proud of that association. It was a cancerous environment in the dressing room with those guys, and they certainly did more negative than positive harm to the business. Scott Hall, all you have to do is look at him. He's a train wreck with his own life, and he was a malcontent, or a guy that, when you were close to him long enough, you started to feel the same way he did. You just felt so self-destructive and unhappy with your life and your job and everything. He was a guy that was infectious with his bad sort of moods and bad unhappiness in his own life that would spread to all the other wrestlers. When the bodybuilding thing started, here's these bodybuilders, and who likes bodybuilders? I mean, talk about zeros in life, I mean,
There's nothing, I can't say anything good about bodybuilders at all. What a total waste of your life, you know.
Because of the vanity?
Yeah, just the vanity of just all day, you know. There's nothing special about bodybuilders other than they lift weights all day, you know.
What was
it's like
Vince's
beauty
fascination
pageant.
with it?
Some people are, I don't know. I never had a fascination. I mean, I like a good physique and all that, but I mean, to the point of being obsessed and like bodybuilders and the dieting and the, you know, the whole thing is like, who cares? Like, I don't see any ability or skill in it at all. Same with fashion models or runway models. I mean, who really gives a damn? They don't even, they're too skinny and they don't look as hot as they think. Who wants to watch bodybuilders that are not on steroids? I mean, there's no fascination with bodybuilders, period, but if they're not on steroids, like even less, like who cares? And they really, you know what, nobody cared.
It's the shits.
I can't take it.